They all laughed when I said I was moving out with $200 in my pocket. "You'll come crawling back," my sister said. 6 months later, they all showed up at my launch party. It was Thanksgiving. The irony of giving thanks while being told, by your own family, that your dreams are a joke? Not lost on me. The table was packed. My parents sat stiffly at either end, my sister Rachel right across from me, my older brother David pretending not to hear anything as he swirled wine in his glass. I had just said, in what I thought was a pretty calm tone, "I'm moving out. I'm gonna start something of my own." Cue the laughter. Rachel led the charge, as always. "Oh, here we go. Let me guess, you're gonna be a CEO by Christmas?" she said, laughing like it was the best punchline she'd ever delivered. "With what money? 2 crumpled bills and a dream?" My dad didn't even look up from his plate. "Maybe if you'd focused on something practical instead of chasing online nonsense, you wouldn't be stuck." I clenched my jaw but kept my voice steady. "I'm not stuck. I'm choosing to do this." Rachel rolled her eyes. "You're choosing to be broke. Again." That was it. The last flicker of patience in me burned out. "I've got $200 in a backpack. I'll figure it out," I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "You'll come crawling back," Rachel said again. "I give it 2 weeks." No one stopped me. Not even my mom. I walked out the front door into the cold November air with no job, no apartment, and no clue where I'd sleep that night. But I had something they didn't see coming: rage. A slow-burning, purifying fire. The first night, I crashed on my friend Jason's couch. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment that smelled like takeout and ambition. He was trying to build his own media studio, so I knew he'd understand the grind. "Just till you figure things out," he said, tossing me a blanket that smelled like old pizza and dryer sheets. "You've got 3 days max. My girlfriend's already annoyed enough I've got roommates with no rent." Fair. So I worked fast. I took whatever gig I could find. Overnight shifts stocking shelves at a grocery store, then bus tables at a diner on weekends. My sleep schedule went sideways. I became that guy in the corner booth, sipping dollar coffee refills, red-eyed and hunched over a laptop with cracked hinges. It was during one of those late nights at the diner, 3:47 a.m., to be exact, that I overheard a couple of waitresses talking about Shopify stores and how one of them had started making side money selling personalized dog collars. That was the moment something clicked. I didn't know a thing about e-commerce, but I knew what obsession felt like. The next day, I Googled everything I could about dropshipping, digital marketing, customer targeting. I borrowed Jason's ancient iPad and started taking free online courses. YouTube, Reddit, free trials of paid courses. I absorbed it like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. When I wasn't working, I was learning. When I wasn't learning, I was building. And when I wasn't building, I was doubting. I'd lie awake on the couch at night staring at the ceiling, that same sentence running on a loop: "You'll come crawling back." The words made my stomach twist, but they also kept me going. Every hour I put in was a quiet act of defiance. Every skipped meal was a brick laid in the foundation of my future. I hadn't made a single sale yet. But I had a vision. That was more than I'd ever been allowed to have before. The real breaking point came one morning when I walked out of the grocery store at 4:15 a.m., exhausted from unloading a shipment of canned goods, and found that my bike, the one thing getting me between jobs, was gone. Just a cut lock left behind. I stood there in the freezing dark, half delirious from no sleep, holding a half-eaten granola bar and trying to decide whether to scream or laugh. I ended up walking 5 miles back to Jason's. By the time I got there, I was limping. My shoes had a rip in the sole, my socks were wet, and Jason's girlfriend had left a note taped to the door. 3 days was generous. You need to go. I read it twice. I didn't knock. Instead, I sat on the curb with my backpack and one duffel bag and watched as dawn cracked open the sky. That was my lowest point. I remember thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I was just playing pretend, trying to be someone I wasn't. Someone capable of building anything worth a damn. But then my phone buzzed. It was an email. From someone who had clicked on one of my test ads I'd made late at night, using a $5 Facebook credit and a blurry product image. "Hi, is this still available? I'd like to order one." I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't even a sale, just interest. But it was something. A sign. I stood up, brushed off the dirt, and walked. That email was like a wire to my spine. I walked all the way to the public library, feet blistered, back aching, stomach hollow, and sat down at one of the dusty desktop terminals like I had a Fortune 500 empire to run. The site I'd built? It was garbage. Clunky, slow, and half the links were broken. But I had something I hadn't had before, proof that someone, somewhere, wanted what I was offering. That was enough. I doubled down. Over the next 2 weeks, I split my days between physical exhaustion and digital obsession. I taught myself how to fix product listings, how to write ad copy that didn't sound like it was written by a robot, how to budget $10 ad spends like I was handling hedge fund capital. I started sleeping in the back of a 24-hour gym. I still had my old member key card, and if I timed it right, I could sneak in late, use the showers, and crash on the yoga mats. Not ideal. But better than that couch. Each night, after cleaning myself up and wolfing down dollar store tuna, I'd flip open my borrowed Chromebook, connect to the gym's spotty Wi-Fi, and build. And slowly, so slowly, orders trickled in. First 1. Then 3. Then I made $42 in a single night, and I stared at the screen like I had just discovered fire. That was the night I made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not to that house. Not to Rachel's smug little grins. Not to a family that measured worth in degrees and mortgages and pay stubs. I was going to bet everything on me. I didn't celebrate the first $100 I made. I was too busy calculating how many instant ramen packets that could buy and if it'd be enough to stretch over 2 weeks. I still had zero insulation between me and total collapse. But I tasted momentum. That was everything. Each sale felt like validation carved out of granite. But it wasn't steady yet. Some days I made $40, other days I made nothing. And every time I saw that lonely 0 orders today in my dashboard, I felt Rachel's voice creeping back into my head, "You'll come crawling back." So I worked harder. I picked up a side gig delivering groceries just to fund my $5 a day at experiments. I learned the rhythms of the algorithm, when to post, how to angle a headline, how to retarget people who clicked but didn't buy. I ran A/B tests until my fingers cramped. It was somewhere in the middle of December when I finally cracked the formula. A post went semi-viral on TikTok. A video of my product, in this case, a customized home organizer made from eco-friendly materials, got 10,000 views overnight. I filmed it at 2:30 in the morning using a borrowed camera and a white sheet taped to the wall. The next morning, I had 48 orders waiting. I stared at my phone for a full minute unmoving. Then I laughed, loud, manic, relieved. I didn't have the inventory yet. I didn't even have the supplier lined up for that kind of scale. But I figured it out fast. Called in every favor I could. Used the last of my grocery delivery tips to pay rush fees. Slept 4 hours that week, total. But the orders kept coming. That week I made more than I had in the last 3 months combined. And for the first time since I'd walked out of my parents' house with $200 in my pocket and Rachel's laughter echoing in my ears, I allowed myself to believe this could be real. I upgraded my workspace, from the gym floor to a cheap co-working desk I rented by the hour. I bought my own second-hand laptop. I ate something that wasn't shelf-stable. But I never let myself get comfortable. Because I knew I wasn't building a business. I was building a moment. One I would control. By early February, the orders weren't just trickling, they were flowing. I wasn't a millionaire, not even close, but I had stability. I had scale. More importantly, I had leverage. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to build a business. I was going to build a spectacle. A rooftop launch party. Sponsored. Catered. Broadcast. Not for investors. Not for networking. For them. I wanted Rachel to walk in with that familiar smirk frozen on her face. I wanted my dad, stiff in his tie, to wander through a crowd that respected me more in 10 minutes than he had in 25 years. I wanted them to finally ask the question, how did he do this? And I wanted the answer to sting. So I planned like it was war. First, I gave my little side hustle a name, Hollow Ridge Company. Clean, simple, high-end. A nod to the street I grew up on, the one I left behind the night they laughed me out the door. Then, I started reaching out to influencers. Not the kind with millions of followers who never check their DMs, but the scrappy ones. The ones with niche audiences, tight engagement. I offered them early products in exchange for honest feedback, then turned those reviews into paid ads. I reinvested every cent. Next, I got strategic with presentation. Designed packaging so clean it looked like it belonged on a boutique shelf in Brooklyn. Hired a freelance designer from Bulgaria for the logo. Paid a college student to edit my product demo into a short cinematic ad. Every time I could have cut corners, I didn't. Because this wasn't just about building something functional, it was about building something unignorable. By March, I had secured a partnership with a sustainable lifestyle blog that agreed to sponsor a launch event if I covered the space. I said yes before they finished the sentence. Then I found a rooftop venue downtown, glass walls, Edison bulbs, skyline views. Expensive, but I didn't care. I paid the deposit with the same trembling fingers I used to hold dollar store meals, and I didn't blink. I was all in. The event date? May 18th. Exactly 6 months to the day since that Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't even plan that part, it just landed there. Like fate tapping me on the shoulder. When the invites went out, I didn't write some gushy family message or apology for distance. I sent a clean digital card. You're invited to the Hollow Ridge Company. Launch party. Rooftop. Downtown. Dress well. Rachel got one. My parents got one. David too. No message. No smiley face. Just the invite. Jason, my couch friend, was on the planning committee. He and I had made peace after I left, and now he was one of my biggest supporters. You're really doing this, he said one night, looking around at the studio we were renting together. You're turning that anger into art. I smiled. Not art. Fuel. The night of the launch, I stood on the rooftop balcony overlooking the city lights, hands tucked in the pockets of my tailored jacket. Something dark and sleek I bought second-hand and had altered to fit. It wasn't about flash. It was about control. The venue was glowing. Edison bulbs overhead, soft jazz in the background. Waiters moved between clusters of guests holding glasses of sparkling wine and trays of artisanal hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce 6 months ago. Every detail had been planned to the inch. My logo, Hollow Ridge Company, was projected across a brick wall behind the open bar in soft, subtle gold. I checked my watch. 7:03 p.m. The first hour had gone smoothly. Influencers mingled with local brand reps, early customers snapped photos in front of the step and repeat. Jason handled the AV, and my new business partner, yes, I had one now, was fielding interest from a small angel fund we'd been quietly courting for weeks. But I wasn't watching them. I was watching the elevator. At 7:12 p.m., the doors opened. And there they were. Rachel stepped out first in heels that clicked too loud, chin high, scanning the room like she was walking onto a movie set. Behind her came my parents, my dad adjusting his collar like he was at a country club, my mom looking around with tight-lipped skepticism. They hadn't RSVP'd. I didn't expect them to. But I'd left just enough mystery in the invite, just enough suggestion of success, that their curiosity had clearly won out. Good. Let them see. I didn't approach them at first. I let them move through the crowd on their own. Let them realize that people here knew me, respected me. That I wasn't just hosting this event. I built it. I watched Rachel try to act unimpressed, squinting at the product displays like she was assessing flaws, but I saw her hand twitch when someone complimented our table setup. My father stood silently by the bar, watching me through narrowed eyes, like I was something he didn't recognize. He wasn't wrong. At 8 o'clock sharp, Jason tapped his glass near the mic and nodded to me. The music dipped. Conversations quieted. Phones were already coming out, red dots glowing as people went live, took stories, tagged accounts. The skyline was perfect behind me. The moment was perfect too. I stepped up to the mic and took a breath. 6 months ago, I left home with $200 and a backpack. No apartment. No job lined up. Just a blurry vision of something that didn't exist yet. A pause. I'd love to tell you that what you see tonight came from confidence. From vision. But the truth is, it came from anger. From being underestimated. Laughed at. Told to give up. I looked directly at my family. And so I want to thank the people who inspired this journey. My family. Thank you for your brutal honesty. For your doubts. For teaching me exactly who not to listen to. There were polite chuckles. A few sharp gasps. A woman near the bar said, "Oh wow," under her breath. Rachel's face went pale. My dad's hand clenched on his wine glass. My mother looked away. I smiled. "And now," I said, lifting my glass, "to the believers. To the doubters. To the ones who show up, and the ones who wait to be shown. Welcome to Hollow Ridge." Applause. Cameras. A few cheers from the influencer circle. The music kicked back in, louder this time. Triumphant. I stepped away from the mic, calm and collected, and took one last look at my sister. She stood frozen in place, lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. The rooftop buzzed long after the mic drop. People kept coming up to shake my hand, to ask questions about scaling, sustainability, back-end logistics. A few wanted to know if we were open to acquisition, already. Someone even floated a number. But my eyes kept drifting back to the shadows near the bar, where Rachel and my parents stood, still, stunned, half-lit by the soft glow of string lights. Rachel had that look she used to wear in high school when someone else got cast as the lead in the school play. Like she couldn't quite compute that this wasn't about her. That she was the guest now. Not the show. At one point, she wandered toward the display table and ran her fingers across the packaging like she was testing for flaws. "Cute," she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't respond. My mother tried to recover first. She walked over, put on her well-worn smile, the one she used at fundraisers and church bazaars. "This is very impressive," she said. "You really pulled something together." I tilted my head. "Thank you?" She hesitated. "You know, maybe you could come by the house sometime. Tell your father how you really built this." He'd listen now. I stared at her. For a second, I almost said yes. But then I remembered every night I'd spent hungry, cold, alone. Every time I asked for space to dream and was told to wake up and get real. "I think I've said everything I needed to say," I replied, smiling politely. She didn't like that. Her face flickered, somewhere between insulted and exposed. She turned away before I could read it fully, vanishing back into the crowd. And my father? He never approached. He just lingered in the corner, watching. Not once did he make eye contact. When they finally left, they didn't say goodbye. I watched from the far end of the rooftop as the three of them got into the elevator. Rachel hit the button with unnecessary force, her lips tight. My mother stared at her phone. My father's arms were crossed, eyes distant. The doors closed. Gone. And just like that, the weight of them was gone too. After the crowd thinned out, Jason walked up beside me, holding a glass of champagne and a smirk. "Well?" he asked. "Feel like the king of the world yet?" I looked around. The view. The people. The lights. The music. It all looked exactly how I imagined. And yet, something inside me was quiet. Not hollow. Not sad. Just still. "Not a king," I said. "Just a guy who finally stopped asking permission." He nodded like he understood, because he did. That night, I stayed late after everyone left. I sat on the edge of the rooftop in silence, watching the city breathe beneath me. The skyline shimmered like a living thing, each window a story I'd never hear. I let the breeze hit my face, closed my eyes. And in that quiet, I realized something. This wasn't revenge. Not really. Revenge burns hot and fast and disappears. This was liberation. I didn't want their approval anymore. I had built something they couldn't deny. I didn't just prove them wrong. I proved me right. In the weeks that followed the launch, something strange happened. Nothing. No calls. No texts. No snide remarks. No passive-aggressive Facebook posts from Rachel. My parents vanished back into their world of filtered denial and curated family photos. They'd been publicly outplayed, and the silence felt less like surrender and more like stunned retreat. And me? I kept working. The orders came faster now. We expanded to 3 new product lines. I brought on 2 part-time assistants. The little studio I once rented by the hour became my full-time headquarters. Every morning, I walked in, flipped on the lights, and looked at the gold logo on the wall with something that felt, finally, like peace. Not pride. Peace. Because pride had been the fuel I burned to survive. But peace was the thing I had fought for without knowing it. There were still late nights, still screw-ups, still moments I doubted myself. That never went away. But now, every time I stared at a screen too long or sat up at 2 a.m. planning a campaign, I reminded myself. No one gets to tell your story but you. I didn't cut off my family. Not entirely. I answered my mother's text once, just as simple. Hope you're well too. I even responded to a forwarded email from Rachel a few weeks later about some networking opportunity she thought I might be interested in. I didn't bite, but I didn't snap either. They weren't enemies now. They were just irrelevant. And that shift? That was the real victory. One day in early June, I ran into David, my older brother, at a coffee shop. He looked surprised, maybe a little uncomfortable. We hadn't spoken since before Thanksgiving. He gestured at my laptop bag. Still doing the entrepreneur thing? I smiled. Yeah. It's doing okay. He nodded slowly, then said, I saw the photos. The rooftop. Looked like a real company. It is, I said, no edge in my voice. He hesitated. Guess I underestimated you. I looked at him, not to gloat, but to let the moment hang. You weren't the only one. We didn't say much else. Just a nod, a goodbye, a recognition. But it felt different. Like the story had changed.